So today we are going to be doing a little something different, okay? In like one of my previous videos, I told you guys how to win tournaments, and now today I figured that we should be doing a little something about what exactly to go for in tournaments. So that is why today we are going to be doing a tier list. Look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. I got this template. We're going to be doing a tier list of all super legendary creatures that can show up in tournaments. That is not including the celebrity dinos. Well, we're only going to be doing the Jurassic creatures because those are the ones that matter, okay? Nobody really cares about the aquatic or the Cenozoic creatures. I mean, who's fighting for the Cenozoic tournaments? Not me. That's what I know. So I'm going to be showing you the creature, the stats, and where it fits in on the tier list. So before we continue, can I please take a moment to ask you to maybe consider, liking the video and subscribing, because this was a lot of effort to make. I appreciate you guys for sticking around to watch, of course, and of course if you find it helpful, do remember maybe to like and subscribe. It would help me a lot. Thank you. So let me introduce you to our tiers. Instead of S, A, B, C, D, we're gonna have something a little different. In the first tier, in our top tier, we will have must get. These are tournament creatures that if they show up, you need to get, otherwise you are missing out, my friends. The next, good role players. This means that, these creatures are going to do what you need them to do for your park. If you need a tank, you're going to have a good tank. If you need a sweeper, you're going to have a good sweeper, okay? In this tier, we're going to have meh. Creatures that are okay, it's good, you can get them, it's going to help you, but it's not going to be amazing. In this tier, we're going to have isn't really worth it, which are creatures that are kind of bad, like they're just slightly upgraded versions of something good. You shouldn't really spend too much effort on it. And in this one, I actually, you know what I'm gonna have for this one? I don't even know who you are. And these are the creatures that are so irrelevant that I have no idea why they exist. So let's get into it. In with our first creature, and that is going to be a Canthostega. So a Canthostega is an amphibian. It has 1,617 health and 981 attack at max level. It does not have a hybrid, and you can win it from tournaments or by doing the battle stage. So I would say immediately that a Canthostega is going to be put in the isn't worth it tier. A Canthostega, you just get it from the battle stage. Just level up your park. You can get it eventually. It's not exactly going to be revolutionary, just a little bit better than your average legendary. For our second creature, we're going to be taking a look at Albertosaurus. So, if you take a look over here, Albertosaurus at level 40 has 2,448 health, 935 attack, but more importantly, it has a hybrid Scorpius Rex, and Scorpius Rex is a pretty damn strong hybrid look at those stats right there. That is kind of amazing, no? However, considering how much Scorpius Rex costs and how much other hybrids that are better than it do cost, I'm actually going to be putting Albertosaurus in the meh tier. It isn't amazing on its own, and its hybrid it's not like the GOAT or anything, The next creature we are going to have is Amargasaurus. Amargasaurus, obviously no hybrid. It has a decent amount of health, a decent amount of attack, nothing special really, just 800 attack isn't exactly enough to be a sweeper, 3,000 health, not really enough to be a tank. We're going to put it in meh, but below Albertosaurus because it doesn't have any hybrids. The creature following this is going to be Antarctopelta. So Antarctopelta, again, does not have a hybrid. It has meh stats, like even worse than our Amargasaurus over there. So I'm going to be absolutely be putting this guy in below Amargasaurus. As a matter of fact, I'm putting it in isn't worth it tier because Antarctopelta can be unlocked by a battle stage. Now, a Rambagina is a pretty decent sweeper at 2,051 health, 1,190 attack, and it also has a hybrid Cryolobagina, which isn't amazing. However, Cryolobagina definitely can do its job. It has a great amount of health and a very good amount of attack for a tank like this. So I would definitely put a Rambagina in the good role players category. It makes a great hybrid and it itself has amazing stats for a tournament creature. Our next creature, Australia Titan, is so irrelevant that it doesn't even have a spot on the wiki. But even if it did, let me tell you that for this much health, only 1,300, it has so little attack that it is just awful. So that is why I'm going to be putting Australia Titan as our first ever I don't even know who you are. Next is Bag Herpeton, which is something that was recently in the tournament, obviously. And it's a fairly decent creature, I would say, at a solid 2825 health to 883 attack. It's not an amazing standalone creature, but it does make a hybrid, the Bagahisaurus? Weird chap. Which is an amazing glass cannon with a lot of health for its attack. If you think about it, this is way better than a lot of other glass cannons. It's power crept a lot of things. So I would definitely say that the Bagahisaurus is 100% worth it. As a matter of fact, it is going to be our first ever must-get creature. But Jurassic is a slightly better Australia Titan, and something that I would actually kind of consider putting up higher if it wasn't a standalone creature. It doesn't have a hybrid, but I would say that if you are looking for something that can sweep, well, it is kind of something that you can get. So it's going to be in the meh tier, just below a Margosaurus. So our next creature, Borealopelta. Well, Borealopelta has 1968 health and 1000 attack, so it's not bad. Not to mention that it has a fairly decent DNA cost, I believe. It's only costing 6,850 DNA, which is fairly cheap for a tournament creature. And it will do its job as a sweeper. I'm going to say that this is a good role player, not as good as a Rambujan, obviously, but better than the other guys in meh tier. So Brachiosaurus, at a level 40, a Brachiosaurus has almost 3,000 health and almost 1,000 attack. I'm telling you, man, it has the greatest stat. It can be a tank, well, kind of. It can be a semi-tank, and it can also be a sweeper. Brachiosaurus, one of the GOATs. A great role player indeed. Again, Pterodactylus, it's just worse than Brachiosaurus in pretty much every single way. It has a little tiny bit more damage, but less health. I would say that it is a decent-ish role player. It is kind of good, but I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's not exactly worth going out of your way to get. I'm going to be putting it in meh, just above a Margosaurus. Ceratosaurus not only is a great standalone creature at 3,311 health, it is a good tank on its own. It does okay damage. It's enough damage to punish something if it goes too far. Not only this though, it makes an amazing hybrid, Cerazenosaurus with Therizinosaurus. This is the most value you will ever get on a hybrid. This is the most, only 48,000 DNA this thing costs. It has such amazing health and damage. It is just I reckon Ceratosaurus is, again, definitely a must get. It is my GOAT, okay? Even better than Bag Herpeton is Ceratosaurus. Next thing is Cryolophosaurus. Well, I wish I could say the same thing for Ceratosaurus as I said for Cryolophosaurus, but even though it has that hybrid, the Cryolobagina, it's not a good role player. Of course, you need to get it. You need to get it to get the hybrid. I'm going to be putting this guy just at the bottom of meh tier. And it's only saved by the fact that it has the hybrid. Otherwise, its stats are not amazing. It's only it's not good as a sweeper. It's not good as a health tank. It's just not a very impressive creature in general. Our next creature, Darwinopterus, being a pterosaur, I'm going to give it a little bit of leeway because pterosaurs are the hardest things to get in this game. There are so few of them, and if you can get good pterosaurs, they are great. Not to mention, the Darwinopterus has some really good damage. 1,077, it is a good sweeper. I'm going to put this guy in the good role players tier. Our next creature is going to be Deinonychus, and Deinonychus, oh my days, there are so many things that I can say about this creature. It is the cheapest, obviously, but for a tournament creature, these stats are absolutely abysmal, my friends. Deinonychus is not something that you ever want to get, ever. It's just not worth it, okay? Even if you have it, seriously, you are so unimpressive as a creature. Shouldn't even be. It's probably the worst thing that you can possibly have. And Deinonychus, is a fairly mid-tier creature. It has a hybrid Scorpius Rex, which redeems it a little bit, but its standalone stats aren't amazing. But just for the fact that it has a hybrid, I'm putting it in meh tier, actually below Cryolophosaurus, because its stats are even less impressive. Deinosuchus is also a very good standalone creature. However, it does not have a hybrid, which kind of hinders it a little bit. However, if you want a good tank creature, well, Deinosuchus it is a very consistent performer, has enough attack to do really good damage. I'm putting it right here below Arambogyna in good role players. The next creature we are going to have is Diabloceratops. Now, what even is this thing, to be completely honest with you? It has health. It's not an amazing health tank. It doesn't have amazing damage either. I'm going to be putting this guy right in the meh tier, perhaps in the same place as, say, a Pterodactylus. And Dilophosaurus Gen 2, as a standalone creature, fairly unimpressive. However, it is maybe one of the only creatures that has two hybrids, and it has Dilophoboa and Tyrannolophosaur. Now let's take a look at both of these hybrids, shall we? Dilophoboa is, I think, the best Cenozoic creature around. There is literally nothing in the Cenozoic park that can rival this. It's the GOAT. It's made from two like super legendaries, so it must be good. It costs a lot also, but that's beyond the point. The best Cenozoic creature. And Tyrannolophosaur, it does its job. It's not the best Jurassic creature, but it's also just objectively worse than Ceratosaurus, so we can kind of let this go because it's not very good, is it? But in any case, the Dilophosaurus Gen 2 also has very decent base stats. This is just amazing. Look at that, 3,401 health, 709 attack. This guy is a good standalone creature and makes two very nice hybrids. Well, actually, one very nice hybrid and a middle of the park guy. It is a must-get creature. Definitely go for that tournament. So this is Diploculus Gen 2. And as a matter of fact, this is kind of surprising me here. Look at that. That's some decent damage right there. A good sweeper, I suppose. Doesn't have a hybrid, and it's an amphibian. So I'm just gonna cut a bit of slack. It's going to go in the good role players tier. Next thing we have is Diploceraspis, and Diploceraspis is obviously my GOAT. If you have watched my Site H series, you will know that thing has carried me from day one, basically. It has an amazing stat line with great health and okay attack, enough to punish once again, and it makes a hybrid Ophthalmoceraspis, which is made between two super legendaries. One of them is an aquatic creature, which has amazing health once again and really good damage for something with a lot of health. So, however, Diploceraspis and its hybrid are both a little bit expensive, so I can't really put it in the must-get tier. I'm going to be putting it in the top of the good role players tier. Ooh, next thing we're going to have is Dodo. Now, here's one thing that I'm going to say right now. If it's a flock creature, it doesn't matter what kind of stats it has, what kind of hybrid it makes. It is a must-get creature. Any flock is going to be put at the top of must-get. They are all so useful. I'm not even going to bother looking at Dodo's stats. I'm fairly sure Dodo has a pretty abysmal attack, but it doesn't matter because it's just so good as a flock creature. It can tank all the hits and get you so many turns. Definitely get that if it shows up in the tournament. The next creature we're going to be looking at is Dracorex, and Dracorex does make a hybrid with Dracoceratops. Its base stats are okay. It could be used as a sweeper, but again, it's not amazing. I would not say that this is a very good creature standalone. Costs 7,000 DNA, so not exactly cheap either. Its hybrid Dracoceratops is, I think, the best or the second best herbivore in the game. Costs a lot, but I mean, absolutely worth it. So I would say the more late game you are, the more worth it a Dracorex is going to be, but definitely get it because you are probably going to want it when it's late game. Okay, I'm going to put it actually below Ceratosaurus. Wow, the Dracovenator. Now, Dracovenator is an interesting spot right now because when it comes to stats alone, and I'll show you, take a look at Dracovenator right here, 1,482, 1081. Okay, well, it's not the worst. It's still better than like Deinonychus, Deinocheirus. It's still better than Deinocheirus and all that, but it costs so much more. You also obviously can't unlock it just yet because it just came out in the battle pass if you're watching it as soon as this video is released. However, Dracovenator is very interesting simply because it makes the first ever flock hybrid, Compso Venator, and this is so incredibly good, okay, because not only does it have 10,000 health at max level and a lot of damage, but it's a flock, which means that this is going to be the best creature in the game, not in terms of stats, but in terms of usability, and therefore that's going to put Dracovinator in an interesting spot where it as a standalone creature is terrible, not worth it. But if you have the compy unlocked, it's a must get. So I'm going to put it in must get, but keep in mind that this is situational. The next creature we're going to be looking at is Dreadnoughtus. Now Dreadnoughtus unfortunately doesn't have a hybrid. Its stats are mediocre at best. I'm going to be putting Dreadnoughtus unfortunately. And actually, not to mention, if we take a look at its DNA cost, it is goddamn expensive, 7,500. That's insane. I'm going to be putting Dreadnoughtus unfortunately. And for a creature that I like so much in terms of, like, you know, its name, Dreadnought, that's so cool. I'm gonna have to put it in the isn't worth it tier. The next thing we're gonna have is Adaphosaurus, and Adaphosaurus, I believe, is so amazing because it is a great standalone creature at 4,069 health. It has the most health. Correct me if I'm wrong once again, I might prove myself wrong later in this video, but the most health that I know of any super legendary creature. Its damage is terrible, but it will serve very well as a tank. So first we have Baggerhisaurus, and this is the reason why Baggerherpeton is in our top tier, which already means that Adaphosaurus is going to be top tier. That being said though, it's such a good health tank and it makes such a great hybrid. I'm definitely going to be putting Adaphosaurus in the must-get tier, right next to Diloge N2. Our next creature, Edmontosaurus, has 1,200 damage and 2,000 health, making it a great glass cannon. It doesn't have a hybrid, which is unfortunate, but you never know. Maybe in the future it will. So I'm going to definitely be putting this guy in good role players tier. Enosaurus, great health tank, 3,700 health, 444 attack. Unfortunately, no hybrid. It is going to be worse than Diploceraspis and worse than things like the Brachiosaurus and all of these attack guys. As a matter of fact, it's going to be like around about where Deinosuchus is in terms of usefulness. It's a good role player, but not amazing. If we take a look at its cost, also fairly cheap. I would say it belongs about here. Erlikosaurus is one of the best because it makes a hybrid, Erliphosaurus, and Erliphosaurus is obviously one of my favorites. It's made from Erlikosaurus and Dilophosaurus. It's very cheap and it's a very good creature, not as good as Cerazenosaurus, but still incredibly good, very worth it. I would say the Erlikosaurus, just for its hybrid, is a must-get creature. So there we go, Erlikosaurus right there, about where Ceratosaurus is. It's not as useful as a standalone creature, so it's just below, but still very good indeed. Now Eryops, well, it doesn't have a hybrid. It is, you know, it's a good health tank, but it costs 7,000 DNA. And it's kind of middle of the park as health tanks go. We are going to be putting this guy, well, it's just worse than Diploceraspis, okay? So we're also talking about in relation to everything else. To be completely honest with you, Eryops is not worth it. If you're gonna invest in a tournament creature, do invest in Diploceraspis. It has a hybrid, and it's just a better standalone creature. Eryops is not as good. And Fukuisaurus is right here. Again, it's more a health-oriented creature with 3,013 health, 770 damage. Pretty well-rounded, actually, and it has a decent amount of ferocity. However, once again, no hybrid, very expensive at 7,150 DNA. So I'm going to be putting Fukuisaurus ultimately in one of the lower tiers. It's going to be put in our isn't worth it tier. And Geosternberger is another pterosaur, and again, another very nice glass cannon, better than a Ram Vagina, which is already a good role player. So obviously, we are going to be doing Geosternberger. Well, it doesn't have the hybrid, which is going to put it like slightly below, even though it does have better stats. Not having a hybrid kind of hurts a little bit. Next creature we are looking at is going to be Giganotosaurus Gen 2, which is the creature that is currently on a tournament right now, and I'm fairly sure Giga Gen 2 does have a hybrid, which is Scorpius Rex Gen 2. It's a very good health tank. I mean, well, it's not very good, but for 7,000 DNA, you're getting something that can pull its weight. It can punish creatures if they go too far. And the Scorpius Rex Gen 2 hybrid that it makes with Irritator Gen 2, well, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? 5,000 damage, and it still also has 9,000 health. So therefore, I would say that Giga Gen 2, even though it's not necessarily amazing, is going to be a must-get, but on the very low end. Next creature we're going to have is Gorgosaurus. And as you all know, Gorgosaurus makes a hybrid. It makes Gorgosuchus. And Gorgosuchus, well, even though Gorgosaurus itself is a terribly weak super legendary, just better than a regular legendary creature, Gorgosuchus is so strong that it doesn't matter how strong the Gorgosaurus is. Gorgosuchus is so good, you just have to get it. Gorgosaurus, another one of the creatures that is going to go into the must-get tier. Rhyposuchus has a hybrid that it makes with Iguanodon, Iguanosuchus, but even it, as a standalone creature, it already qualifies for our good role players tier with its great health and great damage. Its hybrid will make it even better. I mean, obviously Iguanosuchus is pretty strong, but I mean, kind of not worth it considering how much it costs in terms of DNA. That's not really going to boost Rhyposuchus much. I'm just going to be putting it right about, you know, here in our good role players tier. Next creature we're going to look at is Homalocephalae. And Homalocephalae, I mean, what can I say about this thing? It's just kind of bad, isn't it? Like, it's not amazing health, not amazing in attack. It is just, it costs a lot, and it's just, like, it has no hybrid. Homalocephalae has no redeeming qualities, and for that reason, it's going straight into the I don't even know who you are tier. Next we have Iguanodon and obviously Iguanosuchus, right? But it is not as good as Rhyposuchus in terms of stats, and therefore, even though it makes a hybrid, the hybrid itself isn't very good. The Iguanodon is a very mid creature. I'm just going to go with a meh tier for Iguanodon. The next creature we're going to look at is Irritator Gen 2, which obviously makes Scorpius Rex Gen 2 a hybrid we have already discussed. It is not exactly expensive at 6,900 DNA, however its stats are kind of weak. So in terms of comparison with our Giga Gen 2, well, the Irritator Gen 2 isn't exactly a must-get. As a matter of fact, it's not even a good role player. I'm going to chuck it in meh because it does make the hybrid with Giga Gen 2, and you kind of need those two both to make it, but it's just not exactly amazing. Caprisuchus Gen 2, it makes a hybrid, Caprodaclys, which for some reason I've never heard of. So let's open this to see if it's any good. Oh, well, it's decent, but I mean, obviously not amazing for, it only costs 700. Okay, you know what? I'm going to give it, like, this is a pretty good creature, okay? With two Pendaclys, Caprisuchus as a standalone creature is kind of meh, but it is about as good as, actually, well, it's not bad, actually. I would say that Caprisuchus Gen 2 is a pretty good creature. It's a great role player, like maybe just below or above Brachiosaurus because it makes a hybrid. The hybrid itself, I mean, it's not amazing. It's not like one of my favorite hybrids because it just, well, obviously I've never heard of it, but it costs quite a lot of money, quite a lot of DNA, and it's not the best. Like, this is not something that should be costing this much DNA. 77,000 DNA is so much. I mean, obviously things cost a lot more nowadays because of inflation, but I would really like to have it stay normal, innit? Kentrosaurus does not make a hybrid. Kentrosaurus's stats are kind of abysmal. However, it's not like completely terrible, so Kentrosaurus isn't going into the bottom tier. It is, in fact, though, I'm gonna go into the isn't worth it tier at the very bottom because, well, it just isn't worth it. It's pretty cheap, 6,000, but its stats kind of don't even warrant that cost even. The next thing is going to be Coreanosaurus, and Coreanosaurus is a good sweeper. I would say that immediately with this stats, it makes it a decent role player. But I mean, we already have a few very nice role players in here, and in comparison to them, Coreanosaurus and its 7,150 DNA price tag is not going to be as good, which is why I'm going to be putting it in the meh tier. It doesn't make a hybrid, and it isn't that great. Despite Lithornax having a hybrid, the Glithornax, and it having pretty decent stats, which makes it an okay sweeper, its price tag, 7,050, as well as Glithornax's price tag, 60,000 DNA, for something that is kind of terrible, to be honest with you, is going to make it not exactly great. So even though it ticks most of the boxes for what I would say is a good creature, Linthornax is unfortunately going to have to go into the isn't worth it tier. Masiakasaurus, again, okay stats for a sweeper, doesn't have a hybrid though, and therefore we are going to chuck Masiakasaurus into the meh tier. Next creature we are looking at Megalosaurus. Now Megalosaurus is one of the OG goats, because not only does it, its stats are nothing to write home about. It costs 7,000 DNA. If it was just this standalone creature, this is going to the not worth it tier. However, it does make this beautiful creature, Pachygalosaurus, the creature with the most health in the entire game, and it only costs 77,000 DNA, very cheap as well. So therefore, Megalosaurus immediately is getting a promotion into Musket tier. I don't know, it's not a very good standalone creature, still better than these guys in terms of usefulness, right here next to Bagherpton. Metriacanthosaurus, which is it's a decent glass cannon. I wouldn't really write home about it if it was just this standalone creature. However, it makes the Metrophodon, which not only is kind of cheap, but is also an amazing pterosaur in terms of attack. This is obviously going to bump Megalosaurus up in rating, and Metriacanthosaurus up in rating, and we're going to chuck it in Musket. The next creature on our list is Monkeydactyl, and I wish I could say the same thing that I said for the past two creatures for Monkeydactyl, but it is kind of just underwhelming for something that costs 7,300 DNA, one of the more expensive one of these guys. It is terrible. Well, it's not terrible, but it isn't amazing, especially for its cost. So therefore, Monkeydactyl, without a hybrid as well, is kind of going into our meh tier. After this, we have Nodosaurus, which is not a bad creature, okay, not that bad. But what makes it amazing is its hybrid Armor Matter. And Armor Matter is, I believe it's the best herbivore in the game right now. This Nodosaurus creature is going straight into the Musket tier. Make sure to get it if you can right here. All of the pterosaurs, I feel, seem to have a lot of attack, and Linklosaurus is no exception. At 1,084 damage and 2,314 health, it is a great role player. However, just because of its price tag, I would say that it is not as good as some of the other role players that we have. Nyctosaurus is going to have to go into the meh tier. Next up is Ornithocheirus, and Ornithocheirus does not have a hybrid. Ornithocheirus has a lot of health, a decent amount of damage. It is very good. It is a good creature, don't get me wrong. And its DNA tag, well, it's kind of justified actually. So instead of putting Ornithocheirus in like a middle tier, I'm actually going to put it in a good role players tier because of its raw stats. After this, we have Pachyrhinosaurus, and Pachyrhinosaurus is one of the components to Pachygalosaurus, and obviously, well, Pachygalosaurus is so good that it doesn't matter how bad its components are, they are immediately going into Musket tier. It's actually going to be like just above Gorgosaurus because it's kind of bad, but it goes right there because of what kind of hybrid it makes. It's amazing, really. Parasaurolophus Gen 2 has a hybrid, the Chromospinus. However, I'm a little bit disappointed with the Chromospinus, if I'm going to be real with you. It costs so much DNA, and it's not as good as the other carnivorous hybrids. For example, Eudon, for example, Pachygalosaurus, which costs less than it. I'm going to be putting my Parasaurolophus Gen 2 into the isn't worth it tier because its own creature costs so much, right? Costs so much, 7,500, isn't worth it. Its hybrid, once again, costs so much and isn't worth it. So there's really no reason to get this guy. Just get your other creatures, seriously. After Parasaurolophus Gen 2, we have Protogodrinus, which is a decent standalone creature, doesn't really justify its price tag, and it doesn't have a hybrid. So unfortunately, for how good of a starter creature it has been for my part in Site H, Protogodrinus isn't worth it, and is going to have to go right there, below Lithonax, because it doesn't even have a hybrid. Pteranodon Gen 2 is a very nice creature. Look at those stats. However, it costs 8,000 DNA. A lot. It also makes Pteroquetzal, which is okay. I mean, it doesn't cost a lot of DNA, and it does its job. Luckily, that's kind of going to redeem Pteranodon Gen 2. I was actually going to put in the meh tier, but just because of that, right? Just because of its hybrid and its good stats as a base creature, Pteranodon Gen 2 is getting a promotion into good role plays. Our next creature is going to be Rinchenia, and Rinchenia was not too long ago a battle pass creature. It costs so much DNA for its stats, and it's not an amazing creature. I mean, look at this. It's not going to do well as a tank or as a sweeper. It costs a lot as well. Rinchenia is unfortunately not worth it, and I will be putting it in that tier. Rodriguez Solitaire, nothing needs to be said about this thing. It is a flock, and a flock means that it is going to be put into the must-get tier because all flocks are so good. And that is all we need to say. Next is Scelidosaurus. Oh my god, I can't even open it. It's taking so long. Scelidosaurus. Okay, Scelidosaurus is not amazing. Not okay. This is just run of the mill. I wouldn't even bother getting this. This is not worth it. Don't get Scelidosaurus, guys. It's just not an amazing creature. Not worth being in your park. It's about as good as like Kentrosaurus. I am a huge Secondontosaurus glazer. I have been ever since it was just a standalone creature. But now, Secondontosaurus has a hybrid, so let me just glaze it some more. Not only does this creature have a lot of health, 3,600 health, and a decent amount of damage, and it doesn't cost that much, but it has a hybrid Secondontognathes, which not only is a pterosaur, my friends. No, Secondontognathes is also literally the GOAT. I mean, look at that. And it rivals Metrophodon. Okay, well, it's not as good as Metrophodon, but it is very good for a pterosaur hybrid. It doesn't cost a lot either. But Secondontosaurus is unfortunately going to be demoted down to good role players because its hybrid actually is kind of sucky. Our next creature is going to be Segnosaurus, and Segnosaurus is probably one of my favorites just because, well, not only, well, I mean, I've said this about a lot of creatures, but Segnosaurus is actually pretty good. It costs a lot of DNA, and I would say that that is not worth its stats. However, it makes a great hybrid, Segnosutrus, which is obviously no longer the best herbivore. As a matter of fact, it's no longer even like, I wouldn't even call it that great anymore. But for 51,000 DNA, this is a good hybrid, and it comes from a pretty decent creature in terms of base stats as well. So I would definitely say that Segnosaurus is something that you would want to get, and is going to be a good role player. Seymoria, and Seymoria is a health tank. It has, I mean, really good health, almost 4,000, and okay damage, and it costs 7,300 DNA. Again, I mean, this is a lot of DNA, but this creature is something that is going to be worth that much DNA. Seymoria is going to be going in the good role players tier right after right after Dinosutrus, Sinoceratops. It depends on how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. Now, this does have a hybrid. Sinoceratops alone is a pretty run-of-the-mill super legendary creature. I wouldn't really bother getting it if it was just this. But let's take a look at its hybrid and see if this makes it any more worth it. Made with Spinosaurus Gen 2. It costs a lot of DNA, that's for sure. And I mean, okay, it's pretty good, actually. I mean, it's better than something like a Chromis Spinus. Costs less DNA. It's a herbivore. You know what? That's very nice. I'm going to put Sinoceratops then all the way in the good role players role because its hybrid isn't amazing. Okay, actually no, look, very bottom of Muscat, just because I mean its hybrid is all right. It's an okay creature. Unfortunately, it's not a good standalone creature, so I can't really recommend it any more than that. But I mean, that hybrid is very nice, and it doesn't cost all that much either. And again, Sinosauropteryx is another flock, and just for that reason, that thing is going straight into must-get. Flocks are the goats. Next creature is Sonorosaurus. Sonorosaurus, kind of mediocre. I mean, what can I say? It costs a lot. It's not very amazing as a health tank. Just get a Ceratosaurus if you want something like this. Sonorosaurus doesn't even have a hybrid. Unfortunately, I can't put it any higher than a not worth it tier, actually. Right here, let's take a look at Spinacodon. Spinacodon doesn't have a hybrid. It's, again, very run-of-the-mill as super legendaries go. Again, this is another creature. We're getting to the stage now that, you know, these creatures are no longer good role players. They're not even meh. Like, these are just not worth it. They are not worth getting. Right here, in the middle of it isn't worth it. The Spinosaurus Gen 2, it makes Chromospinus, and it makes Spinoceratops. The Spinosaurus Gen 2, very useful. Immediately then, Spino Gen 2 is going to be put into the must-get role. It has two hybrids, one of which is a must-get hybrid. The other one is a pretty bad hybrid, to be completely honest with you. It put Parasaurolophus all the way down here, but this guy is kind of useful next to Dilo Gen 2. Kind of, I mean, you could go either way. I'm going to put it above Dilo Gen 2. We're almost at the end, guys. I can see the light. Next is Stegosaurus Gen 2. Now again, very mediocre, cost a lot. The stats aren't amazing. It's another thing that we gotta just rattle over. These guys are just so bad. Stego Gen 2 immediately goes into the isn't worth it tier. The Stegosaurus, and the Stegosaurus again, no hybrid, costs actually not that much and not too bad stats, okay? Like this I would consider using as a health tank. Stegosaurus, I mean, I wouldn't put it in the not worth it tier. It isn't worth it, but it's going at the bottom of meh tier because despite not having a hybrid, its stats, well, kind of makes up for it. Struthiomimus, and does Struthiomimus have a hybrid? I wonder. No, Struthiomimus does not have a hybrid. It doesn't cost a lot. It only 6,800 DNA. Its stats, unfortunately, are kind of terrible. It's not a good sweeper, and it isn't anywhere near useful as a health tank. Struthiomimus is getting chucked into the isn't worth it tier, right in the middle of the pack. Styracosaurus Lux, and low-key, even though Styracosaurus Lux is kind of bad in terms of health, it has good damage, and it costs a lot. It's not worth it as a standalone creature. It does have a hybrid though, Draco Lux, which is mixed with Draco Rex Gen 2. Wow, this thing is amazing. Hello? Isn't that super good? Okay, never mind. Styracosaurus Lux might be getting a big promotion. I was gonna put this thing in not worth it, but now that I think about it, it's going right up here in Muscat. Blasphemous, lots of health, very nice actually, but kind of costs a lot. It's kind of not worth it, but at the same time, for how much it costs, would I say it's worth it? It's meh, but I'm gonna put it in a good role player tier near the bottom, just because it's a high health pterosaur. You don't really find that every day of the week. Therizinosaurus Gen 2 doesn't have a hybrid, is a good health tank, but again, like there are lots better herbivores you can get. But if you're gonna go for it, then Therizinosaurus Gen 2 isn't exactly terrible. I would still put it as a good role player, right down near the bottom there, just because it's also a herbivore. There's so many of those guys. Next thing we're going to look at is Trike Gen 2. Now Trike Gen 2, the only thing good about it is that it makes Dracoceratops, and Dracoceratops is great. So Triceratops Gen 2 is going to get a bump up because of that. Its stats unfortunately are bad. It costs quite a lot. I'm going to be putting Triceratops Gen 2, well, only because it has a hybrid. I'm going to be putting it at the top of meh tier, but otherwise it would definitely be in isn't worth it. Troodon is one of the goats. It makes Udon along with Uteranus, and therefore immediately it's great. Udon is obviously, well, now that Udon has been released for a while, I can tell you, right, it's not that expensive. Even though it costs this much, there are so many things that are more expensive that are worse. Uteranus and Troodon are both going to be going in the must-get tier, but Troodon is actually going to go way higher than Uteranus. Troodon's going all the way over here just because its base stats are also awesome. Syntaeosaurus, not amazing, kind of cost a lot. Syntaeosaurus is going into the not worth it tier, absolutely. Tupandactylus does actually have a hybrid. It has this is just the SDNA, this doesn't matter. Caprodactylus with the Caprasuchus Gen 2. We've already said now that Caprasuchus Gen 2 cannot be classified as a must-get, and it is only here in the good role players. So let's take a look at the stats of Tupandactylus. Not amazing, especially for how much it costs. However, it's still a good role player. I would say that it's a decent health tank. It's something that you could pull out and use. I'm going to be putting Tupandactylus here in the good role players tier, near the bottom, just because it's so expensive. Yes, Tupac costs a lot of money. It's honestly nothing special. It's not exactly perfect in terms of, any role. It kind of fits into an all-rounder kind of position. It's about as good as your Brachiosaurus, but costs more than Brachiosaurus. Tupac, you're going the good role players tier, but just at the bottom. Actually, I'm going to bump up Tupandactylus. I need to bump it up above Blasphemous because it has a hybrid that is decent. It's going to go right here. Next, Uteranus. Okay, so Uteranus, obviously, we have already agreed that because it makes Udon, this thing is going into the must-have tier. Uteranus actually being very cheap as well. It's just great. Like Uteranus, unfortunately, it's not amazing as a standalone creature, just slightly better than level 40 T-Rex, so it's going at the very bottom. As a matter of fact, I'm considering bumping it down. I might rearrange this later, so whatever. Next is Euxiosaurus. Now, we're back to something that I have no idea. This is so irrelevant, and I think I've never heard of it. I've never seen it, except for, like, This is going to, I don't even know who you are. And finally, our last creature, Zalmoxes. Zalmoxes is actually something I like a lot, because Zalmoxes doesn't cost a lot. Only 7,000 DNA, the price tag. It's a decent glass cannon, and most importantly, it makes Zalmonodon. So just for that, Zalmoxes, you are going into the good role players tier at the very top. And to close things out, right? Because this is not going to be our final tier list. I think I kind of messed up by having too few tiers. I'm going to be adding a new tier, should get. Because, you know, they're not must get. I'm going to make it like pink or something. Should get. Because it's not as good as the must get creatures, but they are pretty good. I'm going to be moving a couple of things like Utaranus, Gorgosaurus, Styracosaurus Lux, that's going there. Sinoceratops. The guys who are kind of mediocre are going to go here. You, my friend, are going here. These guys are going to stay. Draco Rex is not necessarily amazing. You're going to should get. And yeah, so actually Triceratops Gen 2 is getting a bump up then. And I believe that should be it. Should be you as well. And I think that I'm fairly happy with this. Obviously, a couple of my rankings were a little bit off, I would say. Like, even looking at it right now, I don't really use all of these creatures. I don't have all of these guys maxed on my main account. I have most of them, but not all of them. But I think this is a very decent tier list. It gets you a good idea of what you should be aiming to get. Obviously, these guys are things that if they show up in the tournament, do get them right now, max them out. It's amazing. So this is going to be it. This is going to be the end. This is our final tier list right here. If you guys have any disputes, if you guys have anything, any aspect of this tier list that you're not happy with, make sure to comment that down below. I would like to know. And, you know, please like and subscribe if you made it this far. This was such a pain to make, and it's even more of a pain to edit because I had to go through, you know how many times I took breaks to drink water and stuff during this video? So many times. I started so many times. So if you think that it has been helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in future streams and videos.